Hello everybody. So in today's video, I want to talk about two of my stocks, which are Enphase and Tesla, but I want to talk about them through the lens of the value proposition of their product. And specifically, one of the major bear arguments of this stock market is that people are not going to buy products that are expensive because interest rates are very high. And they point this single issue out. They say, oh, the cost of money is so high and thus people are not going to buy the product. Cost of money high, people don't buy the product. Cost of money low, people buy the product. Classical Keynesian fallacies are really I think, misplaced views on how the world works, because they imagine a scenario of spending. So the typical example of that scenario that you imagine is that, let's say you want to do a bathroom remodel, I don't know, $25,000, you want to have all the bells and whistles, you remodel your bathroom, and the benefits. What are the benefits of a bathroom remodel? But well, those benefits have nothing to do with money. You don't save any money, you don't have any return. The benefits are just in the form of quality of life, non-economic payouts. That's the benefit. That's just a hedonic benefit. And so, of course, if you're just going to be spending money for pleasure and borrowing that money that you're spending for pleasure, then the cost of your renovation loan moving from 5% to 13% just increased the cost of whatever pleasure you want to buy. And so, of course, in that typical scenario, that does not work. And that's, I think, one of the key issues of Keynesian economics is that it does not assume, right, this scenario, cost of money and odds of purchase, or purchasing based on the cost of money, does not assume benefits beyond just the non-economic benefits. Yet the top two stocks that I have, EV vehicles, right, Tesla and Enphase, these top two stocks have, for major features, economic benefits, right? One of their major feature, not the only one, right? For Enphase, for example, energy independence would be a quality of life feature, right? And for Tesla, the pleasure of, I don't know, fast acceleration, for example, that would be, or not having to go to the gas station, that would be a quality of life feature. But these products include a strong money-saving component. They have a return on investment built into the purchase, right? Built into a purchase, there is a return on investments. So, which is why, because those purchases actually yield you a return on investment, I believe that they remain compelling in high interest rates environment, because these high interest rates environments drag down the returns of other alternatives, such as, say, stocks and bonds. I mean, look at what happened to bonds. Bonds have lost more value than stocks as interest rates go up. And I believe this type of product that save you money, they save you that money in any environment, regardless of the interest rate. And of course, the only thing that changes is how much your arbitrage, right? How much more money are you going to make on top of the interest rate? And so, of course, they become perhaps a bit less compelling, but they do not have such a strong relationship, in my view, between the cost of money and the odds of purchasing. So let me briefly show you what I mean, starting with Tesla. So let's do the example of a Tesla. Money-saving techs pay for themselves, right? The title of the video. So if someone were to get a brand new Model 3, as of right now, went on the website, right, and if you remove the $7,500 tax credit, you get a $31,500 car, right? The Model 3, and these batteries change from car to car. Tesla is a very agile company, but let's assume that the battery is a 50 kilowatt hour battery. And let's assume the advertised mileage is correct. That's 272 miles, 440 kilometers. So it costs you 50 kilowatt hour to drive 272 miles. In my area, for example, I pay 13 cents per kilowatt hour. I have a long-term contract, and my cost would be $6.50 for 272 miles versus about $40 for a gas car. And gas right now is like at $2.90 a gallon. So that's roughly, the math roughly works out for me. I would pay $40 $7 to drive 272 miles with a gas car versus $6.50. So think about that saving. That saving is tremendous. And of course, if you don't drive a lot, you may want to sit this one out and not buy an electric car if you don't drive a lot. But if you take into account that you're busy nuclear family, kind of your typical 2 adults, 2 kids family, it's not uncommon for those to drive 400 kilometers, 270 miles every 2 days. Well, maybe less if you don't live in Texas, but in Texas this is not abnormal to drive this much every 2 days, right? Between picking up the kids at school, sending them to school, soccer practice, whatever you call it, all of these activities, they put a dent on the car. These cars have to drive. So let's assume you fill up every 2 days. Maybe a generous assumption, but not for many. Let's assume that would cost you $97 a month in electricity versus $600 a month in gas. And so for my area, that would be a $6,000 savings in that scenario, or a 20% return per year, or a 5-year payback on buying that product. So of course you get all of the non-economic payouts, but you also get a financial payout. And so as long as your interest rate is about half of that, which it is right now, right? Right now you're going to pay 10-ish% interest rate if you're well qualified for your car. You're arbitraging and a 10% on top of that, right? So the return is very high. And of course, that return increases if you live in an area where gas is not under $3 a gallon. If you live in an area where gas is $7 a gallon, like it is in some areas in the US right now, all of a sudden your return becomes double. And all of a sudden you make 40% per year. That's why California is so filled with electric cars, because they realize, oh wow, gas is very expensive here and electricity is less expensive. Now, of course, keep in mind, so 13 cents, I have an old contract, so I realize it's more like 15, 16 cents in my area right now. So this math changes a little bit. And we have a little bit of a correlation, of course, between the price of electricity and the price of gas. But if you get solar on your home, of course, that greatly cancels out, because you can use solar to charge your car. And also, in some states, you have special rates with your electric utilities where, for example, you don't pay electricity at night, or you don't pay electricity on the weekends. And so if you're savvy, a lot of people are going to decide to, say, charge the car when the electric rate is either lowered or when it's like free electricity nights, for example. Very common in a lot of deregulated energy states. So you may have plenty of ways to charge that battery on the cheap. When is this cheap? So the savings for getting an EV in general, not just a Tesla, but an EV in general, in my area, it's 6 times cheaper. Right? But in some areas where millions of Tesla buyers live, it is 10x cheaper and more than 10x cheaper. And all of my videos that I made on Tesla, my initial calculation says between 7 and 13 times cheaper in general. Between 7 and 13 times cheaper, depending on where you live. This depends on other factors. But this is the type of money-saving tech that pays for itself, right? That's an order of magnitude cheaper than the alternative. And the usual pattern that we see in this phase of product adoption of electric vehicles, right? 6-ish% of brand new sales in the US are electric vehicles. This new pattern that we see is you have a family who typically will have 2 cars, and then one of the cars become electric. And then once the car is electric, that electric car becomes the daily driver, and you just have the gas car sitting on the parking lot because people realize, oh, wait a minute, it costs me 10 times more to drive that gas car than it does to drive that electric car. So that's for the basic calculation here. So it's a money-saving tech. If anything, saving money is going to be more important in high interest rates environment where, say, for example, you may have to put a lot of effort into buying a house and you may have to have a greater payment elsewhere. These products provide savings. And the same is true for solar. So I won't walk us through a similar math for solar, mostly because I've done a full video for Enphase. about the return of a typical Enphase system. And so when you go into this video, I assume that you're kind of paying full price and not negotiating is what I assume in this video, and you're paying $28,000 for a 10 kilowatt hour system, and you're receiving the $7,500 tax credit. And in this video, it's interesting. I use like the most average place in America, which is somewhere in Kansas. Like I use the most average everything. So of course, if your ROI of solar is going to depend on your location. Knowing if you're located in a sovereign state, your returns are going to be much higher. Well, not much, but a little bit higher. And if you live in a colder climate, you might have to put more solar panels if you live in those climates. But anyways, doesn't matter. In this video, I go through everything and I calculate that the payback is about 6 to 9 years. Right, it's a 6 to 9 year payback, and in this very average example, everything average with a 10 kilowatt hour system, which by the way is kind of a smaller-ish system, I'm getting to a break even in year 9, right, where you get back the money and you get back also the tax credit in year 1. So your $28,000 is paid for. And what you'll see is that one of my assumptions is the Enphase system is I assume 10% increases each year in electric years in electric rates. Now, of course, in my view, it's going to be much more than that. The electric rates are going to increase much more than that. And of course, if your electric rates turn out increasing earlier, then your savings are even more substantial, and you can get to 6 years, and you can get even lower depending on where you live. Oftentimes, if you get a bigger system, you can get a lower cost per watt. My point is that with returns like this, right, both electric cars and solar panels yield savings that are greater than current interest rates. And these are investments that you can't really do. Outside of your Roth IRA, for example, it's very rare to find an investment that is tax-free. But this type of return is tax-free. Because why is it tax-free? Why is it a tax-free return? Because you're not getting the return in form of money. You're getting the return in form of money not spent. Right? That return you're getting into, I'm spending less money on electricity. I'm spending less money on gas. That's the return you get. You get an in-kind return. You don't get a return in the form of money. And of course, savings are not taxed, which is why you have to really compare this to a tax-free return. And when you look at, say, my ROI calculation for a Tesla car, 20% return tax-free is kind of unheard of. It's very, very high. And I'll finish with this. Even if you were to say that the interest rates were 20% and that the interest rates were the same as the ROI of these systems or this car, right? If you're saying 20%, there's no benefit. Well, keep in mind, I'm assuming no economic, I'm assuming zero non-economic value. I'm only looking at the economic aspects. But we know that in any purchases, you have a lot of non-economic factors that come into play, like the feel-good factor. How do you explain why in solar, for example, if you follow solar, you may know black solar panels are more expensive and they're more popular and they're trendy and people like them, right? And you look good in the neighborhood. How do you explain that, right? That's a non-economic value. How do you explain why people pay more money for certain paint colors for their cars? Right? There's a non-economic aspect to most purchases, which I'm not even capturing in there, right? So keep in mind there's payouts for both buys in the form, for example, a big non-economic payout, of course, of getting solar is energy independence and having the peace of mind that if there is no power anymore, you're still producing power for your home. That's one of the big payouts. So I'm not assuming any of these zero economic value payouts. I'm assuming none of this. I'm only looking at the financial. I think these are products that are still compelling with the interest rates right now, and I don't think the interest rates will go up, but if they did, these products would still be more compelling because they are not only hedonic buys, they're buys that people want to have, right? They create a happiness in us when we consume, so they're consumption buys, but they are also money-saving buys. And I think this is what's gonna really help these products keep doing well in the future. And I'm happy to have Tesla as my number 1 position and Enphase as my number 2 position. Anyways, this was a bit of a different video today. No investment advice, just entertainment. Thanks for liking, subscribing, and thanks for watching my channel. Have a wonderful day.